If an avoidant does test ice, you mean the world to them. You know, we often get so caught up in trying to decode avoidant partners, wondering why they pull away, why they go quiet, why they sometimes seem distant. And if you've ever loved someone with avoidant tendencies, you know it can feel like walking into a room where the lights keep flickering on and off. But here's the truth. Avoidants aren't unloving, they just love differently. For them, love can feel risky. Vulnerability can feel unsafe. So when they do let someone in, when they do take certain actions, those actions aren't small. They're enormous. The key is this: if an avoidant does something that costs them comfort, safety, or their carefully built walls, it means you're not just anyone, you mean the world to them. What does that look like when they share something personal, a fear, a dream, a past hurt? That's not just conversation. That's a deep act of trust. For someone who prefers self-reliance, letting you peek behind the curtain is a huge deal. When they let you in on their routine or space, it's not about convenience. It's about intimacy. Their world is usually tightly protected. If you're invited into it, that's their way of saying, I feel safe with you. When they choose connection over retreat, that's monumental. An avoidant's default response to conflict or overwhelm is often distance. But if instead they stay, engage, or work through it, that's love in its purest form. When they make future plans with you, it's not casual. Avoidants live in the here and now to feel in control. If they're imagining you in their future, it's because you've become an anchor in their present. And finally, when they apologize or soften their edges, it's profound. Pride and self-protection are strong forces. If they're willing to bend for you, it's not weakness. It's a testament to how much you matter. So if you've ever questioned whether you're important to that avoidant partner, don't look for the grand, obvious gestures. Look for these quiet, brave actions. They're not small. They're the clearest sign you've touched their heart in a way few ever will. When someone with avoidant tendencies begins to share their personal fears, dreams, or even fragments of their inner world, it's not just small talk, it's a breakthrough. You have to understand that for most avoidants, opening up is uncomfortable, almost unnatural. Their coping mechanism has always been self-reliance. They've learned, often through early experiences, that depending on others or revealing too much of themselves can lead to disappointment, rejection, or even abandonment. So they built walls, strong ones, not out of malice but out of survival. Behind those walls, they keep their emotions, their vulnerabilities, their tender hopes. On the outside, they may look calm, in control, and sometimes even detached, but inside is a person with as many fears, insecurities, and longings as anyone else. So when they take the risk to show you something real, maybe they admit that they're scared of losing you, or they tell you about a childhood moment that shaped them, or they let slip a dream they've never dared to speak aloud. It means they've crossed an enormous threshold. It's not just words, it's trust. Trust for them doesn't come in declarations of love or grand gestures. It comes in these quieter moments, these windows into their soul, where they choose to let you see what they've been protecting for so long. And if you're on the receiving end of that, you should know how rare and precious it is. For an avoidant, sharing isn't just about honesty, it's about surrender. They're surrendering control of the narrative they've carefully managed, the version of themselves they've always felt safest presenting to the world. They're giving you the chance to respond, to either hold their confession gently or to mishandle it. And believe me, they don't offer that chance lightly. It might not sound like much when they tell you, I worry that I'm not good enough. Or, sometimes I wonder if I'll ever reach that goal I've had in my head for years, but in their internal landscape, that's monumental. That's them saying, I trust you enough to show you the side of me that doesn't have it all together. You may notice they don't do this often. They may retreat quickly after sharing, almost as though they regret it. They might downplay it with humor or try to change the subject. But don't mistake that for insincerity. It's just the aftershock of vulnerability. Imagine holding something fragile out into the world, terrified it might get broken, but offering it anyway. That's what an avoidant does when they open up. What makes this so significant is that avoidants usually feel safest keeping their emotions hidden. It's their way of staying in control, avoiding hurt, and preserving independence. So when they deliberately choose to let you in, they are stepping directly into the very space they fear most. dependence, and vulnerability. And they only do that with someone who matters deeply, someone they believe won't use that knowledge against them, someone they trust to see their imperfections and still stay. It's their way of saying, often without the words, "You're not just another person in my life. You're someone I feel safe enough to be real with." When an avoidant lets you into their world, their space, their daily rhythm, the little details of how they live, that is far more than just an invitation to hang out or spend time together. For someone who has always valued independence, who thrives on having control over their environment and their time, allowing you into those private corners is one of the clearest signals that you are significant to them. Avoidants are used to keeping their personal world carefully guarded. Their space is their sanctuary, the one place where they don't have to explain themselves, where they can breathe freely without anyone else's expectations pressing in. So when they open the door for you, it isn't convenience, it's intimacy. Think about it. Many avoidants find comfort in routine, the morning rituals, the favorite spots in their home, the quiet solitude of their evenings. These aren't just habits, they're structures that provide safety. Within those routines, they know who they are, they feel steady, they feel in control. Disruptions can feel invasive. Sharing those rituals with someone else means breaking the pattern they've leaned on to feel secure. And yet, when they begin to weave you into that fabric, when they let you sit with them during their morning coffee, or they allow you into their workspace, or they show you their favorite hidden spot they go to for thinking, it's an act of profound trust. It says, "I'm willing to risk my comfort to make space for you here." Avoidants don't easily blur the line between my world and your world. In fact, they usually prefer to keep those lines sharply drawn. They'll give you glimpses of themselves in the outside world, on dates, in conversations, through shared experiences, but their personal bubble is a whole different level. Letting you in is essentially lowering the defenses that have kept them safe. It means you've become someone who doesn't feel like a threat to that safety. It means they see you not as a disruption, but as someone they want to integrate into their life. And it's not just about physical space either, it's about emotional space too. When they start to text you during the mundane parts of their day, when they want to tell you what they had for lunch, when they share the silly or boring details of their schedule, that's them pulling you into their world. It might seem small, but to them, those are huge gestures. Because for avoidants, their world is their fortress. The fact that they're carving out room for you inside it means they see you as safe, trustworthy, and worthy of closeness. It might not look like romance in the conventional sense. There may not be dramatic gestures or over-the-top declarations. But in the language of an avoidant, opening up their space is romance. It's their way of saying, "You belong with me, in my life, in my rhythm." It's quiet, it's subtle, but it's real. And if you're there noticing, you'll realize how deeply meaningful it is to them. When someone with avoidant tendencies chooses to stay present in a moment of conflict or emotional intensity instead of retreating, it's one of the strongest signs that you matter deeply to them. For an avoidant, pulling away is not just a habit, it's their safety mechanism. Distance has always been their way of regaining control, of soothing themselves, of ensuring they won't get overwhelmed by emotions they don't quite know how to handle. Silence, withdrawal, or avoidance feels safer than confrontation or closeness. It's not that they don't care, it's that caring too much terrifies them. So when they resist the instinct to leave and instead lean into connection, that's not just a small gesture, it's monumental. Imagine the effort it takes for them. Every fiber of their being is saying, "Step back, protect yourself, don't let this get messy." And yet they stay. They stay in the room during a disagreement. They stay engaged in a conversation that feels vulnerable. They don't slam the emotional door and disappear. That choice for them is an act of courage. It means that protecting the bond they share with you is stronger than their urge to protect themselves. It's love showing up in its quietest, bravest form. For avoidance, staying connected in difficulty is not their default. Their default is independence, solving things on their own, shutting out the noise, avoiding emotional exposure. So when they deliberately override that instinct, they are, in essence, saying, "You're worth the discomfort. You're worth the risk of being misunderstood. You're worth the vulnerability I usually run from." That is not something they do for just anyone. It's reserved for the person who has earned their trust, The person who feels safe enough to challenge their patterns without making them feel trapped. It might not always look graceful. They may stumble over their words. They may go quiet for a while before responding. They may struggle to articulate what they're feeling. But the fact that they're there, that they're trying, that they haven't walked away, that's what matters. With every second they resist the temptation to retreat, they're showing you just how significant you are. It may not be flashy, but it's real and it's powerful. There's something incredibly tender about this choice, because to stay is to risk. To stay is to allow themselves to be seen at their most unguarded. And avoidants know how dangerous that feels. Yet in those moments, they're not choosing fear, they're choosing you. They're choosing the relationship over the reflex. They're choosing connection over safety. And that choice is one of the most authentic expressions of love they're capable of giving. So when you notice an avoidant who would normally retreat but instead leans closer, speaks honestly, or simply remains present, don't underestimate what you're witnessing. That is their heart on the line. That is them saying, without needing to say the words, "You matter more to me than my comfort. You matter more than the walls I've built. You matter more than my fear." When someone with avoidant tendencies starts including you in their future plans, it's not a casual gesture, it's a profound signal of commitment and trust. Avoidants are naturally oriented toward the present moment because the future feels uncertain and often overwhelming. Thinking too far ahead can create pressure they'd rather avoid, as it opens the door to expectations, responsibilities, and the possibility of disappointment. Their instinct is to keep life manageable by focusing on what they can control right now. So when they step out of that comfort zone and begin to picture you in their tomorrow, it means you've become more than a fleeting presence. You've become an anchor in their life. It often begins subtly. Maybe they mention a concert they'd like to attend with you in a few months, or they suggest a trip for the following year. Perhaps they talk about holidays and ask what your traditions are, or they casually drop hints about what it might be like to share a space together one day. These little glimpses into the future may seem small, but for an avoidant, they carry tremendous weight. They are imagining continuity, something that goes against their usual instinct to keep things temporary and flexible. Including you in their plans is their way of saying, "I see you as part of my story, not just my today." This shift is deeply significant because it requires vulnerability. To make future plans means they are allowing themselves to rely on the possibility that you'll still be there. That level of reliance is terrifying for someone who's built their identity around independence. It's not just about the plan itself, it's about the emotional investment behind it. They're acknowledging that they want you there, that they're willing to consider a future intertwined with yours. And while they may not spell it out with dramatic words, their actions are already speaking volumes. Another layer to this is consistency. When avoidants begin to follow through on these plans, when they not only talk about the future, but take steps to make it happen, it shows a deepening of trust. They are not only envisioning you in their life down the road, they are actively creating space for you there. That could mean saving a date on their calendar months ahead, introducing you to people who matter to them, or making decisions with you in mind. Each of these choices is a departure from their default mode of self-protection. Each one reflects the growing belief that you are worth the risk. To include you in the future is to let go, even just a little, of the illusion of total control. It is to admit that life feels more meaningful with you in it, that the idea of tomorrow is less intimidating when you're part of it. And for an avoidant, who often feels safest alone, that's no small thing. It's a declaration, sometimes unspoken, that you are not just a passing chapter, you are part of the bigger picture they are finally allowing themselves to dream about. When someone with avoidant tendencies apologizes or softens their edges, it's not just about the words themselves, it's a transformation of posture, a quiet moment where pride takes a step back and vulnerability takes its place. Avoidants often hold tightly to their independence and sense of control. Saying, "I'm sorry," or admitting fault can feel like giving up that control, exposing themselves to judgment or rejection. Their instinct is usually to defend, to withdraw, or to rationalize. So when they choose to apologize, to bend, to let their guard down, it's a profound sign that the relationship means more to them than being right or staying safe. For avoidance, apologizing isn't simply about smoothing over conflict. It's about taking a risk. In that moment, they're putting their heart on the line, trusting that you won't use their vulnerability against them. They're showing you that your connection is more valuable than their ego. It might come in small ways. At first, a text after an argument where they admit they could have handled things better, or a quiet acknowledgement that they hurt your feelings. To anyone else, these might seem like basic gestures, but for them, it's a monumental step toward intimacy. Softening is an act of love for the avoidant. These are people who often carry sharp edges as a form of protection. They may come across as distant, blunt, or overly self-sufficient because keeping their armor intact feels safer than exposing their tender side. When they soften with you, when they speak more gently, when they let down their defenses in a heated moment, when they open up to being comforted, that's not weakness. That's trust in its purest form. It's their way of saying, I feel safe enough with you to put my guard down. I don't need to fight or protect myself. I can let you see the real me. What makes this so powerful is the choice behind it. Avoidants don't stumble into apologies or softness easily. It's not reflexive for them the way it might be for others. Instead, it's deliberate, often uncomfortable, and deeply meaningful. When they make that choice, it's because they've weighed the risk and decided that keeping you close is worth far more than keeping their walls intact. It's their love language in action, quiet, subtle, and profoundly sincere. It's important to recognize that their apologies or softened moments may not always look polished. They might struggle with the right words, or they might show it through actions instead, making a gesture to make up for something, doing something thoughtful, or simply being more attentive. But beneath those gestures lies the same truth. They care deeply, and they want to repair the bond. They want you to know that you matter enough for them to stretch beyond their comfort zone. So when an avoidant bends, when they apologize, when they soften, you are witnessing one of the clearest signs of their love. It's not about perfection, it's about effort. And that effort carries a weight that speaks louder than any grand declaration could. It's their quiet way of saying, you're worth more to me than my pride. You're worth more than my walls. So if you've ever found yourself doubting where you stand with someone who leans avoidant, remember this: their love doesn't always show up in fireworks. It often comes in subtler forms. The trust they give when they open up about their fears, the intimacy they extend when they let you into their world, the courage they show when they stay present instead of retreating, the hope they reveal when they make plans with you, and the humility they display when they soften or apologize. These may not look like the classic signs of romance, but in the language of an avoidant, they are some of the loudest ways of saying, you mean the world to me. The key is to notice these quiet gestures, to honor them for what they are, and to never underestimate the bravery it takes for an avoidant to love. Because every time they choose connection over distance, every time they lower their guard, every time they let you see the truth of who they are, that's them telling you that you've reached a place in their heart few ever do. Thank you for giving me the time to share this with you today. I hope it not only helps you understand avoidant love a little more deeply, but also helps you recognize the profound beauty in the ways it shows up. Take care, cherish the quiet gestures, and remember, sometimes the softest expressions of love are the strongest ones of all. Goodbye, and thank you.